roll out of bed and put clothes on.
Good morning, everybody.
People would be like, you don't.
It's been a long time since we've done a webinar, whether you're new to doing webinars with us or one of our friends that chimes in a lot for our sessions. We're super happy to have you here to talk about Windows 11 with our senior systems consultant, John Anderson. I have a few little housekeeping things to go over right at the top of the hour. So we have, if you have any questions throughout the session, please feel free to ask them in the chat. If you don't know where to find the chat on Zoom, it's in that lower bar, just kind of a standard chat bubble. Click into that and ask your questions. I'll be keeping an eye on that chat and getting them to John throughout the session. And secondly, if you are interested in collecting on that free coffee that we offered in the email, we need you to stick around until the end to take the exit survey. It's just a little way for us to get to know you a little bit better. And we'll get you that coffee gift card as long as you registered with a valid school or government email address. So that is all for me. And I'm going to pass it over to John to really get us going.
All right. Thanks. And welcome everyone to a smooth, secure, and future-ready move to Windows 11. So today's session is going to be talking about how to move away from the existing Windows 10 that you might have in your environment and get on to Windows 11. The agenda for today, we'll do introductions quick, and then we'll get into system requirements, compatibility reporting, options for doing the upgrade, troubleshooting if there's issues, and then looking at how we can do customizations and new features. So I'm John Anderson. I'm a senior systems consultant here at Trifera. I've been doing Microsoft consulting for over 15 years now. And my focus is on secure and automated management of your identities and devices. And I've got the requisite Microsoft certifications and whatnot there as well. So before we jump into the meat of the presentation, just a couple of call outs for Trifera here. We do offer a wide variety of professional services at Trifera. Obviously, we can help with your Windows 10 to Windows 11 migration, but we have a broad range of expertise in the Microsoft product stack. So Office 365, cloud identity, Entra, Azure AD, your device management, Intune, Autopilot, even legacy Microsoft, on-prem configuration manager, Active Directory, group policy, Exchange. And generally, if you have a Microsoft question, bring it to us. Chances are we can help you out with it. I also want to highlight our DICE tool. This is a tool we've developed in-house. At its core, it's an asset tracking and like purchase order tracking tool, but it also has many other features that you can enable. Things like real-time data collection from devices, real-time location tracking, warranty lookup information, AMT or Intel vPro management. So if you're interested in a tool like that, again, feel free to reach out to us. All right, so the main reason we're here, why upgrade to Windows 11? So the most common reason I see people looking to upgrade is, of course, Windows 10 hits its end of servicing in October 14th of this year, just a few short months away. But beyond that, there's many other reasons to go to Windows 11. The main one being there's much improved security tools and features on the OS. So a lot of new stuff that is not in Windows 10. Compatibility with the latest applications and hardware. You get improved integration with Copilot. And just a generally improved user experience. They've finally enabled the tabbed file explorer. The Windows Snap is much better, just to name a few. So the first thing you need to consider when you're looking to move to Windows 11 is what are the requirements to get there? There's many different system requirements, and I've included a link in the slide deck here to the full Microsoft list of requirements. And by the way, the link to the deck will be in the chat at some point here, so you can get it from there. For the system requirements, though, I want to just highlight a few of the main ones that people run into. So two of these, the TPM and the UEFI, can be potentially fixed on your devices, and one of them, the processor, cannot. So the TPM and UEFI are features that'll be on any sort of enterprise hardware that you've bought for many years now. It could just be that there's a setting that you need to change in the BIOS to make those be compliant. The processor, on the other hand, is you're kind of stuck, right? So in general, Windows 11, the processor requirement is Intel 8th gen and newer, or AMD Ryzen 2000 and newer. If you have an older processor, like an Intel 5th gen, 6th gen, something like that, you're just going to have to upgrade that hardware to have a newer processor. So we know what the system requirements are for Windows 11, but how do we report on if our devices actually meet those system requirements? So there's several tools to do that. Microsoft has a few tools. Configuration Manager, if you're using that, has a dashboard and custom queries that you can run. Intune and Azure have several different options of reporting and queries that you can run. And then the information is also just stored in the registry on devices. So if you have a third-party solution or want to do a custom scripted solution, that information is there on every machine to be gotten. So let's take a look at just a few demo things here for how you can look at the compatibility. So first, I want to show just some screenshots from Intune. So out in Intune, if you go to the reports section, there's several reports you can run to get valuable information. In this case, I want to highlight the Windows Feature Update Device Readiness Report. If you click into that report, you'll get an output that looks like this. So you'll get a list of your devices and what risk state they're in for doing the update. So low, medium, high, or replace device. So in this case, we can see I've got a bunch of devices here. I get the name, manufacturer, model, OS version, and what I need to do with the device. So I've got one device there at the top that's low risk. It doesn't have any app, driver, or other issues. But then I've got several other devices that need to be replaced, and they do have various issues. And you can see processor family is listed for all of those that need to be replaced. If you want more details on the compatibility issues, there's also the Feature Update Compatibility Risks report. If you click into that, you'll get a report looking like this that shows specific applications and drivers that are causing compatibility issues in your environment. So in this case, you can see I've got a few drivers there that are listed as medium risk, meaning they might cause an issue and they're going to be removed during the upgrade. If you have anything that's a high risk, it's going to actually block the upgrade from happening. Also in Intune, there's the endpoint analytics. So if you go again into reporting, endpoint analytics, and then work from anywhere and the Windows tab, you'll get this same type of information. So a listing of your hardware and whether or not it's capable of going to Windows 11 and the reason why it's not, if it's not. And the last report I want to call out is out in Azure. There's a log analytics report you can set up under the monitoring workspace. It's called the Windows Update for Business report. Do note that setting up this report does require having a pay-as-you-go subscription set up in Azure, though the data for this report is actually exempted from the charges. So even though you have to have a subscription, you won't get charged for the data. But if you run that report, you'll also get the same type of information. So a listing of your devices that are capable or not capable, and then you can drill into that data and get the same detailed information. So those are kind of all the options for looking at the cloud-based reports that Microsoft has. There's also using their legacy on-prem configuration manager tool. If we start this here. So I'm in the software library workspace, and then there's this Windows 11 upgrade readiness. And here you can see a breakdown of which device versions you have out there, which OS versions you have, and then if you have devices that are ready for the upgrade or can't upgrade. And then these can be clicked into to get a breakdown of those devices. So if I click on the cannot upgrade, I get my one device here, and we can see that it has TPM, UEFI, secure boot issues. If I want to see more details, I can go to my devices and actually run the Resource Explorer on that device. And then there's a hardware inventory class called Upgrade Experience Indicators. And that gives me the full breakdown of the compatibility information for all the different versions that were checked. And then where does all of that data actually come from? So we have these reports that are all kind of showing us the same data. So on this device, this is just a Windows 10 device here. And I'm going to take a look in the task scheduler. So in the task scheduler under Microsoft Windows application experience, there's this task called the Microsoft Compatibility Appraiser. This is a task that'll be built into all the systems by default, and it runs every day, and its job is to check the compatibility of your device with the different feature updates that are available out there. So when this runs, it writes information to the registry. So you can see we're in local machine here, down a path. And don't worry about writing these paths down. I do have them in a slide in the deck here in a minute. But we can see under the target version upgrade experience indicators, there's all the different feature updates that are available. So I'm going to click into the 24H2 key here. And you can see there's all sorts of information that is collected about that feature update. So I can see the destination build number it's going to go to. I can see if there's any prereqs that were failed. I can see if there's a gated block, or also known as a safeguard hold in place. And then most importantly, there's this red reason key. So that tells you if there is a hard blocking compatibility issue. In this case, it says none for this device. But if I did have like a TPM or a processor compatibility, it would be listed in this key. So that'd probably be the main one you'd want to inventory if you were looking to inventory this information with like a third party or scripted solution. And then here's that slide where I just noted down the path to the task scheduler job and the registry keys that the task scheduler writes to. So that's kind of the end of looking at the compatibility, like how to check compatibility. Were there any questions on that section?
I don't see any in the chat, but I will let you know if they come in at the end during Q&A.
Sounds great. So now that we've been able to report on the compatibility of our devices, the next thing is, what are our options for dealing with the devices that are incompatible? So obviously the first thing we want to do is, if we can resolve the compatibility issues, resolve them. So for things like the TPM or UEFI and Secure Boot, often those are just switches that can be made in the BIOS or firmware of the device. And generally all the major manufacturers, including HP, have tools that you can use to programmatically set those settings. So using Intune Configuration Manager, or whatever other system management tool you have, we could make those changes. If you have systems that are failing the prereq because of not enough system memory, or maybe too small of a hard drive, those are just components that could be upgraded without replacing the whole system. But if you do have a system where it can't be fixed, so one with, say, an incompatible processor, then the next best option is just going to be purchasing new hardware. And I'll call out here that Trifera is a proud partner of HP for Windows 11 compatible devices. So we would love to bid for your business if you're looking to get new hardware. So then we've got additional options for incompatible devices here. So if we don't maybe have it in the budget right now to replace all of our hardware that's incompatible, Microsoft did come out with an extended security updates program. And I want to preface this by saying this is a temporary solution, not a long-term solution, but it can buy you some breathing room until you're able to, get the funding needed to replace that hardware. So this program, Microsoft is offering extended updates for Windows 10 for up to 3 additional years. And that's an annual subscription you have to pay to get that. Fortunately, they did heavily discount that rate for education customers. The first year, it's $1 per device, $2 for the second year, and $4 a device for the third year. When you purchase the licenses, you'll get a key that you install on those devices, and then that enables those devices to continue receiving Windows 10 updates for however long that key is good for, up to 3 years. And again, I've included links to the Microsoft documentation that talks more about that program if it's something you're interested in. Continuing along here, another option is Windows 10 long-term servicing channel. So if your licensing supports it and you have access to LTSC, this is a version of Windows you could also install on incompatible hardware. It has a longer support term. Depending on the version you're using, it could buy you several more years of support. Though I should note that this is a version of Windows not intended for use on normal end user devices. It will work, but it's more designed for like IoT style devices. So it is lacking in features compared to the generally available version of Windows. So I wouldn't recommend it, but it is an option to at least stay secure. And finally, the least desirable option is just installing Windows 11 on unsupported hardware. So it is possible to install Windows 11 on unsupported hardware using imaging tools like Configuration Manager, though it's obviously not recommended to do so. Microsoft has said that they will not guarantee that devices running an unsupported configuration will continue to receive updates in the future, and you'll certainly have issues applying feature updates. Also, some of the features of Windows 11 may just not work because the silicon is just not there to support the features, which that may result in system instability. So things like system and application crashes. So if you are looking to go down this route, I would definitely recommend doing a thorough vetting of Windows 11 on whichever hardware you're intending to install it on. So now we're ready to actually do the upgrade. So what are the options for doing that? Microsoft has several tools available. So Configuration Manager has a couple of options, pushing the upgrade out as an update or a task sequence. There's also Windows Update for Business, which you can configure with either on-premises group policy or using Intune. And then there's just the manual upgrade. So if you download the setup media, you can run it, or you could even script that, as the setup in the ISO does support command line parameters. So let's take a look at a couple of those options. So first, I want to call out Windows Update for Business, because I think that's the best option to handle this upgrade. So Windows Update for Business, if you're not familiar, is a Microsoft tool for updating devices directly over the internet, where they talk to Microsoft, but giving you a bit more control over the process. So you're able to set policies that control when devices see the updates, how long they wait to install the updates, and then once there's a pending reboot, how long they wait to reboot, and then controlling, the user interface and experience throughout that process. And then you could create multiple policies. Maybe you have a pilot policy that installs updates more quickly and a production policy that waits several days after the pilot policy. So these settings are all configurable with group policy or Intune. So I'm just taking a look quick at group policy here first. We'll be under computer configuration policies, administrative templates, and then Windows components, Windows Update, and then we'll start with the manage updates offered from Windows Update. So there's several policies in here that you'll configure, but I want to highlight a few of the more important ones. So the first one being select the target feature update version. This setting lets you pick specifically what build and version of Windows you want to deploy to your devices. So in this case, I've put in Windows 11 24H2, but you could also put different versions in there. And this will hold devices at that version as well. So when a new feature update comes out, say there's a 25H2 update next year, it won't automatically go to that until you update the policy telling it can. In addition to that policy, we also have policies for managing the end user experience. So for instance, here I can set the number of days after the device shows up on the device until it installs. So the deadline, in this case, I set it to 0. So the update just installs right away. And then the grace period. So the number of days once there's a pending reboot until the device forces the reboot. I have it set to 1 day here, but you could set that as far out as a week if you want to give users more time to do that reboot. So that's kind of a quick look at the group policy settings. Out in Intune, there's also the ability to configure these settings. So you just go to Devices, Windows Updates, and then Update Rings. And you can see I've got an example pilot and production policy created here. If I go into my production update policy, then edit the settings, we've got kind of all the same settings here that were in the group policy. There is also this additional setting that I'm highlighting here called Upgrade Windows 10 devices to the latest Windows 11 release. So you'll want to flip that on if you do indeed want to do an upgrade. And then in addition to the base settings, there's also this feature updates node in Intune, where you can deploy out the feature update just like we looked at in group policy. So this policy, I'm saying deploy out Windows 11 24H2, but I could select one of the other builds. But a setting that's different with the Intune one here is I can choose to make this update available or required, whereas the group policy one is more just required. So this also gives you the option of, choosing to have users install the update at their own pace. So that's configuring the Windows Update for Business settings. So what does it actually look like on a device then once you have those settings configured? So here I've got a Windows 10 device that has the Windows Update for Business settings applied to it. So I'm going to go into the Settings app and then Update and Security and do a check for updates. And I'm doing this just manually here. If the updates are set up to be required, this will automatically happen behind the scenes without the user understanding that it's happening or even seeing it. So the initial download and install will all happen while the user is still using their machine. It's kind of invisible to them. But then once the download and install process is completed, the user will be prompted to reboot their system. So they'll get a notification like this saying the organization requires the device to restart by some date. They can pick a time to schedule the reboot. They can say restart tonight, or they could choose to restart the device now. If they just ignore the notification, it'll eventually automatically reboot at the end of whatever you've configured the grace period to be. And then once they do the reboot, it just goes through and does the last couple of processes here to get the update installed. I've obviously sped this up quite a bit, but they've really made good progress in having a lot of the initial, a lot of the upgrade process happen during the initial phase where it's happening behind the scenes. So this sped up version here took about half an hour in total, but about 25 minutes of that was actually before the system required its reboot. And then after I did the reboot, it was only about 5 minutes to get back to the logon screen. So they've done a good job of making that reboot phase a lot less impactful to the end users. You can also do this same process on a device that's managed with Configuration Manager. So here I've got a device where I've deployed the update out through Configuration Manager. So instead of going to the Settings app, I'd go to Software Center. And then in the Updates node, you can see the Windows 11 update there. In this case, I've again made it available where I'm having the user choose to install it, but I could also make it required where it just installs automatically. So come in here and click install, or again, if it's required, this would happen automatically. It goes through the process to download and install. And then the user is again prompted for a restart, just a little bit of a different restart window. And the restart timing here is based on the client settings that are configured in Configuration Manager. And then after doing the restart, it goes through the exact same process as we just saw with the Windows Update for Business. So then the next thing I want to call out is using Configuration Manager to deploy the feature update as a task sequence. So the option I was just talking about was doing the feature update as an update, which I think is a nicer end user experience, but it also gives you less control over the process since it's more just kind of doing the update in its default state. And then if you want to do additional customizations, you would generally be doing them through like policy. But if you have a situation where you really need that fine-grained control over the process, you can use a task sequence in Configuration Manager. It's just not going to be as nice of an end user experience, but it does give you more control. So if you want to go down that route, the first thing you need to do is download the setup media from Microsoft and extract the ISO out into a folder here, which you can see I've already done and stored it out on a network share. You then come into Configuration Manager and your software library operating system upgrade packages, and then you would import those extracted files as an operating system upgrade package. Once you have that, you can go to your task sequences and create an upgrade task sequence, which is just one of the default options when you create a new task sequence. And then it'll build out this template with just some default steps in it. So we've got a step to check the readiness for the upgrade. You can see it checks all the different compatibility of the device. We've got a step to actually do the upgrade. So it calls that upgrade media that we imported and has some additional steps for dealing with like compatibility messages. And then finally, a restart computer step, where you can see this restart computer step is, oops, jumped ahead there. The restart computer step is only 10 seconds long. So it's kind of just like reboot right now, right? Rather than the nice experience that the users had in the other reboot method. But you can see the task sequence does have many other sections here where you could do things like deal with incompatible applications or drivers prior to the upgrade, or apply extra customizations or security settings after the upgrade. So again, if you need this detailed level of control, the task sequence is there, but you're kind of trading off end user experience to get that more detailed control. All right. And then the last thing I want to call out is doing the manual upgrade. So you can just download the ISO from Microsoft and extract the contents, which is what I've done here. And you get this setup.exe. You can run this setup.exe just manually to one-off upgrade devices. But again, this exe does also support command line parameters. So you could script this as well to be pushed out to devices. If you just run it manually here, it'll pop up a setup wizard, which you can just click next through. It'll check for updates. It does a prerequisite check against your machine to make sure it's compatible, accept the license terms. It then does a few other checks, make sure there's enough space on the hard drive and everything. And once that's completed, you get an install button where you're able to kick off the upgrade. Okay, so that's kind of doing the upgrade. I don't know, any questions yet on that?
None have come through.
Okay. So next then we would move on to troubleshooting a Windows 11 upgrade. So we've kind of talked about how to do the upgrade, but what if there's a problem? How do you report on it or resolve it? So there's several options around this as well. Again, out in Intune and Azure, there's several different reports you can run to view this data. Microsoft also has a free tool called Setup Diag that can be used to parse the upgrade log files. So if you've ever tried to troubleshoot an upgrade before and went down the route of looking through log files, you'll understand how complicated that can be. There's many different log files with the upgrade, and they're kind of spread out in several different locations. So having this tool that can kind of collect them all together and parse through all of the data and give you a short output is very nice. I've also included links to Microsoft's pages that list the locations of the upgrade log files and all the common error codes, which can be very useful when you're looking through like an Azure report or a setup diag output that gives you an exit code. You can then go to Microsoft's site and find out what does that exit code actually mean. And I also included a link just on the technical details of the upgrade process, which are very useful if you're, trying to do troubleshooting, is understanding exactly how the process is working behind the scenes. So let's take a quick look at how to look at upgrade errors then. So again, out in Intune, there's a feature update report you can run. And that gives you output looking like this, where you can see the status of your devices, if they're in progress, if they've successfully completed, or if you have devices that are actually in an error state. You'll get a listing of those devices. I don't have one that's in an error in this example, but if you did, you'd be able to click on it and see some basic error information. There's also that Windows Update for Business report in Azure that I mentioned. Will give you the same type of data. You can click into it, see devices in an error state, and see basic error information. If you're actually able to access a device that had an error, you can utilize the Setup Diag tool I talked about before. So Microsoft has it freely available on their website to download. You can also find it in the Windows Upgrade folder, but here I've downloaded it and just put it in the temp directory. And then I'm going to run a command line to run it. So I'm calling setupdiag.exe. I'm pointing the output to the temp folder and a results.xml. And then I'm specifying that the format should be an XML file. So I run that, it parses all the log files, and we can see we get some quick output where it shows an error message. But then down at the bottom, it shows me where it output the log files to. So I'm going to go take a look at that. So I've got this results XML file, and you can see it populates a whole bunch of kind of the highlights from the logs files. And then down at the very bottom here, I have an error code, which it's not a very, readable code in this case. Sometimes it gives you a nice, English answer, but sometimes you get an error code. In this case, I could copy that error code and then go out to Microsoft's page where they note what all the error codes are and do a search for it. And here I see this error code translates to the system didn't pass the minimum requirements to install the update. So it failed the prerequisite check. So I could go back to my setup diag folder and extract the logs that it collected for me and look in that logs folder and take a look at the prerequisite scan result. And if I click in here, I can see all the prerequisite checks that were run, and I see, oh, look, there's the TPM check, and it has a hard blocker. And the UEFI Secure Boot also has a hard blocker. So that tells me that this device has a problem with the TPM and the UEFI. And then I could go work to resolve those and try the upgrade again. So that's kind of just, yeah, a quick look at how you can use setup diag to troubleshoot an issue on a device. All right, so then next we get into customizing Windows 11. So Windows 11, many of your customizations that you set up for Windows 10 work kind of the same way on Windows 11, though there are some things that work a little bit differently, specifically the start menu layout, the taskbar layout, and then disabling or enabling, just managing some of the built-in features. So start menu customization, I'm going to note down in these next few slides, like the policy locations you can go to configure these, and then we'll take a quick look at a demo of how to actually manage them. Again, the link to the slide deck will be in the chat. So the start menu, you can set it as a preference where we just copy a start.bin file into the default user profile, or you can set it as a policy where it'll be locked and the users can't change it. And there's a MDM policy location for that. Taskbar, same type of thing. For preference, you can copy an XML file to the default user profile. There is also a group policy or MDM policy to forcibly set the taskbar and lock it in place. And then some of the common shortcuts and features. So the widgets app, the Copilot app, the recall feature, there are policies to manage all of those as well. So let's take a quick look at a demo. So I've got a Windows 11 device here, and I want to start by configuring the start menu. So first, what I'll do is go in and customize the start menu the way I want it to be, pin, unpin apps, move things around where I'd like them to be. Once I have the start menu looking like I want, I'll go into my File Explorer and into my App Data, Local, Packages, and then the Microsoft.Windows.Start menu folder. And then within here, the local state folder, and there's the start2.bin file. I could then take that and copy it, have my imaging or autopilot process copy that bin file to the default user directory on new devices, and then that would be the default start menu layout, but the users would still be able to change it. If I want to do a start menu policy, I can run a PowerShell commandlet, export-start layout, to export the start layout to a JSON file. So I'm just going to run that command here. And then go on the file system, and I've got that JSON file. And if I look at that, it's got all the start pins. So I could take this JSON and go put it into a start menu policy file, which would configure the start layout and not allow the user to change it. So then the taskbar. So the next thing I want to do is pin custom things to the taskbar. So if I run this PowerShell commandlet, get-start apps, you can see it outputs a name of all the apps that are installed on the device and their app ID. So for doing the start layout, I specifically am interested in this app ID. So say I want to pin Microsoft Edge to the start menu. I find Edge, I find the app ID is just called MS Edge. So then I go over to an XML file that I've prepared. And if you, again, go out to Microsoft's documentation for this, they have this example XML file you can grab just right from their learn.microsoft.com. But you grab the app ID and put it in here. So you can see I put in an app ID for Explorer, Chrome, and Edge to pin them to the taskbar. And there's also this pin list placement equals replace. That's saying remove all the default pins and then replace them with the things that I have selected here. So then this XML file, again, you could copy to the default user profile to set it as a preference, or reference it in a policy to set it as a policy that's locked down on the device. Okay, and then the last thing to mention is just that there are some new features available in Windows 11. So they've obviously updated things like the start menu and the taskbar and some of the context menus. The context menus I know had been oh, sorry, I see there's a hand raised. Is there a question?
I think it was just a clap.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I know the right click menus have been kind of an area of concern for people. They have with 24H2 made some updates to the right click menus where they now have actual text on them instead of just the icons, and some of the common options like, you know, edit things in Notepad and stuff like that are back without having to click through to the old style menus. The File Explorer, like I mentioned, now supports tabs, which you might have seen in some of the demos that I did there. That's a feature that's, I don't know, apparently been worked on since Windows 95, but has finally made it into the OS. And then they've also improved things around like the Windows Snap and the Snap groups. The settings application, they're, you know, continuing to move things out of the old control panel into settings. You will still see control panel on Windows 11. And there are still some things in there, but for the most part, you can configure everything through the settings app now. Hopefully the control panel will be gone in a future release here, and things will be a little bit simplified in terms of the settings. And then, like I said, there's a whole bunch of other behind the scenes stuff in Windows 11, and specifically a lot of things around Defender security features. So if you're more security conscious, definitely take a deeper dive into that. And that's the end of my prepared remarks for this. So I guess thanks everyone for coming, but we have question time now. So if you do have time, questions or comments, I'm happy to answer them. I could even connect into a device and demo some things if you'd like. Just let me know.
So as I mentioned at the beginning of the session, if you have questions, feel free to pop them on over in the chat. In the meantime, if you're still thinking through kind of absorbing everything that John presented on and racking your brain for other things that you'd like to hear from him, I am going to launch the exit survey. This is our chance to get to know you a little bit better, what you're working on, how you wound up here today in the first place, how we can help you in the future, and other topics you might want to hear in more coffees and convo to come. So before you head out, please make sure that you fill out that survey. That is how you qualify for your coffee, as well as registering with a valid school or government email address. So I'm not seeing any questions in the chat, but thank you so much, John. That was so unbelievably informative. Oh, we do have a question.
Sure.
Okay. Other than booting to the .iso, is there a way to bypass some of the requirements for an in-place upgrade on a legacy machine?
Yeah, so getting Windows 11 installed on a legacy machine, if you use, you know, an imaging tool like a configuration manager or an MDT, where you're actually like laying down an applied like WIM file, that would bypass the checks. If you're looking to actually do the upgrade, there's not any supported way. So you can download like an ISO and go like mount the ISO and modify some of the settings in there so it doesn't do the checks. But again, kind of unsupported and unrecommended. So yeah, I would say using an imaging tool would be the best way to get Windows 11 on an unsupported piece of hardware.
Right. And he confirmed, understood.
All right.
Thanks, John.
And yeah, I know it was a lot of information quick too. So if you take some time to process, you can always reach out to us and we're happy to, you know, answer questions via email or even jump on a short call.
Absolutely. If you are interested in talking with John or any of our other team members about migrating to Windows 11, you do have an opportunity to say so in that exit survey. So do that or reach out on our website, and we are happy to help you through all of your questions that you might have about how to move over to Windows 11 smoothly, securely, with minimal disruptions. So a couple things I did want to point out that I put a link to the deck again at the end of our chat, so you can access all of the links included in that and just have that resource on hand while you're working through all of this in your organization. Secondly, if you are running kind of a hybrid system, Windows, Chrome, we do have a session next week about some of the license changes happening to Workspace for Education specifically. So I will put a link to that in the chat as well. That's going to be another coffee and convo, so be sure to sign up for that if you're interested in learning more about some of the changes happening to Workspace for Education. Again, if you're kind of running that hybrid system. I know we're here talking about Windows, but all right. Again, thank you so much, John. Thank you to our partners, HP, and thank you everybody for being here today. We appreciate your time. It's very valuable to us. And I see a question, is there a link to the survey? The survey should have just popped up on your screen. Let me know if you still are not able to see that. But in the meantime, I'll be in the chat for a little bit longer, but we will say goodbye, stop the recording, and again, thank you. And we hope to see you soon for another coffee and convo. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.